All right, welcome to Now This Is Podcasting. I'm your host, Connor, and I'm here with former guest Calvin.
Thanks for having me back.
And we're talking about one of the classics. This is a quick dip on Jaws.
Yeah, Jaws.
This movie is interesting. I don't say we're doing a review, but this is kind of more of a discussion of kind of like why is Jaws such a big deal? Like what made Jaws what it is, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Why is Jaws?
Like you think of summer blockbuster, this is essentially like the first one. Like this is what started kind of all these big movies coming out in the summer. I mean, like all your Marvel movies don't exist if Jaws isn't super successful, you know?
Absolutely. You don't have your tentpoles. You don't have all of your sequels. If Jaws didn't do it.
Right.
Or at least, I mean, I feel like it would have been inevitable, but maybe it didn't have to start so soon.
Yeah. So my first thoughts on this one is, I like I said, I don't really get why this is so well known. Like, why is it in the zeitgeist, you know? Because I don't think this is like an especially good movie. And I think part of that is I wasn't alive in the 70s. So I don't understand like all the kind of cinematic magic surrounding this movie. And like we're going to talk about later, like why did this become such a big deal? And why is it so well known? It's like, well, I wasn't like around for that. And so like, but now so many movies follow like the template that Jaws has. And so without even watching Jaws, I felt like I had already seen this movie a bunch of times. And so that's kind of like my problem with it. It's like your classic hero's journey, you know. Brody has his call to adventure. He has his refusal because he's scared of water. There's the introduction of like the mentors with Quint and Hooper. You have like the crossing of the threshold when they go out to sea. The resurrection of the characters when they kill the shark, you know, like they've defeated the enemy, and then the return of like your triumphant hero. And I understand like that's a story, that's a way of plotting out your story that's existed forever. But this is like really, really like beat for beat that exact thing. And then a bunch of movies just like kind of aped on that afterwards. And so that's why like this movie is fine, but it's more of kind of all the kind of the pomp and circumstance surrounding it that made Jaws such a big deal. Not necessarily, I think, Jaws itself. So this movie is fine. I get why it's a classic. It's kind of the same way Star Wars is a classic. Like, kind of look back at them and maybe they're not like that great, but all the technology that came out with them is what made them so like it was such a big deal at the time, you know? And I think kind of Jaws has that same feel to it.
Yeah, exactly. So why is Jaws like one of the most well-known films in American cinema? Like, is it really the theme? Like everything this movie is about struggle, you know, little guy, versus government, man versus nature, experience versus education. You have all of these displayed between these character relationships. So that obviously sets up a lot of like American everyman can be in this movie. But is it like its inherent shallowness, like for pure entertainment? Like that's obviously also an element, but like with the concept of this big animatronic shark, or is it the marketing campaign around the whole thing? Like what's so weird is like Spielberg just wanted to make a movie about chasing a shark. It's literally like, that's my impression. Like it's really a movie about three dudes on a boat chasing a shark. It's kind of a weird movie.
Yeah. You're so right. There's really not, like I said, it's like your classic hero's journey. There's not a ton to this, and it's just guys hunting, you know, like your antagonist, you know, kind of this like nameless, faceless horror that they have to take care of, you know.
Yeah. But so like that's the thing. It's like the strangest thing out of all these things that it's most well known for are the worst parts of the film.
Right.
Like the music, the characters' motivations, the one-liners. Like this film has a lot of great things that work, but none of them are what makes Jaws. What makes Jaws are the bad parts of the filmmaking.
It's like it's like you said, the one-liners that everyone quotes now. Like you know, and they appear in like pop culture and other movies. I mean, this movie is referenced all the time. So yeah. But it's like those. Like if you just sit down and like watch the movie like critically, it's like, oh, this is like kind of, especially the score is like, what is it? Like it is so crazy. It's really and it's really odd how it changes its tone kind of completely. Like at the beginning it's a real horror feel, and then at the second half it's like a real adventure.
It's honestly,
it's so odd.
It's honestly like an orchestral suite. Like they thought of like the whole like Beethoven's Ninth, like the whole thing like is composed that way.
Right.
And it's missing the fact that it's actually attached to action on a screen.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so weird about it is just like you could have taken all of that music out and it would have fit much better like in an operatic sense, like,
Yeah.
just to watch the music there. Like it doesn't go with what's on what you're showing.
Yeah, it doesn't fit like the tone of what we're seeing, I don't think.
No, like honestly, like the score is like it's terrible. It's there's so few places that it actually works. It's like it's either over dramatic or distracting from scenes with real tension. So like I want more screams, more water lapping, wind whipping, feet slipping, underwater bubbles, and clanking equipment. Like in spite of the goofy practical shots of the shark, like there's still a number of moments of real terror that are drowned out by ridiculous music.
For sure. John Williams did the score for this, and he showed Steven Spielberg the first time, like, hey, this is what I've come up with. And Steven Spielberg thought it was a joke. He was like, okay, show me the real score now.
Yeah.
Like that's how, like, even the director was like, I can't put this in the movie. Like,
yeah, that's how goofy is that? This is about a shark tearing people to shreds.
It has a real, like I said, in the second half, it has a real like Pirates of the Caribbean feel to it. Like action adventure, our hero is on a quest, but it's like, but the beginning of the movie is a horror movie. And so it's like, I don't understand the tone change, and the score, I think, is what changes the tone more than anything, because you could have a creepy score in the second half of the movie, and I think it would have fit better. But going back more to like kind of what makes Jaws, like why was it such a big deal? And it's the first summer blockbuster. People were queued up like around the block to see this movie. It's the first movie to make $100 million. And a big reason for that is it's this combination of like robust marketing, which like movies hadn't done before. It's like all these TV spots, which we see now, and it's like it's even more saturated now because now like YouTube and everywhere you can see a trailer for a movie. There are whole like channels that are just dedicated to be like every trailer, like for movies coming out like November, every like each month it's like all the trailers for it. So like the idea of TV marketing being like a new thing is so weird to wrap your head around because it's so a part of like the media now. So that was like one big reason why they did it. So like I think the only other movie to really do that before that was The Godfather, and it had like very few TV spots.
It also had like a slow release. Like that's really the difference between how film came out and how it comes out now. Like
right.
They kind of build through word of mouth, starting with a few select theaters and then open into more theaters as the weeks go on.
Yeah, so Godfather came out in 1971, and its opening weekend was 5 theaters. Yeah. And then the following week it expanded to 316, but Jaws opened up in 465 theaters. It was the biggest like simultaneous release of a movie ever. And it's so, again, that concept seems like so, like it's just a part of how movies are released today. Like you don't even think about it now. It's like, oh, that's the date. I can see it in any theater anywhere in the country,
And part of that, like, and what's crazy to think too about, like, when you look back at like film releases and just in general, like why Gone with the Wind is one of the top grossing films of all time is because you didn't have the digital media. You weren't going to be able to buy the DVD. These things ran in theaters sometimes for years. Right. And it was just, you went and saw them frequently because this was your only chance you were ever going to see it. And because once they pulled it out of theaters, out of release, maybe it was good enough that it might show up on TV. Or right. They might have another release, but if it wasn't a good movie, this was your only chance to ever see anything.
Right. Another thing I was surprised to find out was AC being put in theaters. It started in like the 60s. Huh. And that was a big reason. Like a lot of theaters just shut down during the summer because it was too hot. Like no one wanted to go and sit in a building for an hour and a half or 2 hours and watch a movie because it was too hot. And so it kind of just the advent of having an AC in a theater made the summer blockbuster possible, which I think is so interesting. Like that's something that you would just never think of. And that's part of the reason why Jaws was so successful as a summer blockbuster is because, you instead of being like, I'm going to stay inside like my house and stay cool, or, I'm going to go out and find something else to do because I don't want to sit in a stifling theater. Like just the idea of adding cooling in a theater was part of what built the summer blockbuster.
That's so crazy.
I want to give a big shout out to this PBS article I found. It's Jaws, the Monster That Ate Hollywood. That's where I did a lot of my research through that. It is a good article. It's like a quick read, but yeah, it's like so much information on this is why Jaws is such a big deal now. It's not necessarily because it's like critically the best movie. It's just, it was the first to do so many things that we think of just as a mainstay in how movies are released now. It's like, this is the template. Like this is what built like every movie that like Roland Emmerich only has a career because he copies Jaws like every time. Like he does like Independence Day and that crappy Godzilla movie that came out in like 99. He's got this new
I don't know
movie.
about crappy. I love that one. It's terrible, but I love it.
I like it for the nostalgia of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was a kid when that came out, and I thought Godzilla was cool. I had the
So
toys and
cool.
stuff.
Oh yeah, that was like the coolest looking Godzilla too, I think.
It's funny, like people, like the studio in Japan, because it had to be like approved by them, and
Mhm.
apparently it was a little different at first, and they had to like tone stuff down for it because they were like, you can't do this to Godzilla. Like this is like, it's like precious to them, you know. It's like,
Yeah, it's like a cultural like icon.
yeah. So like the studio that like owns the rights to Godzilla, they're like, we don't even acknowledge that film. It's not a real Godzilla movie. But yeah, Roland Emmerich has this new movie coming out. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for it. It's called like Moonfall.
Oh yeah,
It's like
it looks terrible.
it's the Earth versus the Moon, and like that's what I'm saying. But it's what I'm
I
saying.
thought it was gonna be like Interstellar, and then all of a sudden, like there's this black like synthetic like or like sentient like mist.
sort of like a symbiote, like from the Spider-Man movies, kind of like that. But,
Yeah, but it's like omnipowerful and like
Right.
fly and things.
But that's what I'm talking about. Like that's why I think Jaws is such a big deal, is because now you can make a movie where the moon is attacking Earth. But it's essentially like you could replace the moon with Jaws, and I'm sure that movie is going to follow the same plot points of Jaws, but it's the moon instead of a shark.
You're absolutely right. Like that's so funny. Like to think like this movie is ridiculous.
Yeah.
We have a giant great white shark being overly aggressive, and now we have the moon attacking.
Yeah.
Like oh my god.
And so, like I said, it's not Jaws' fault that I wasn't very interested in it. It's every other movie's fault that I'm not interested in Jaws, because I can see the trailer for Moonfall and be like, yeah, I've seen that movie before. And,
Jaws in space.
Yeah, and just other movies that really are, you can tell, are like really inspired by Jaws. I mean, you have like Alien in '79, Tremors is Jaws, Lake Placid is like really Jaws. It's just in a lake.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of like that's why this movie exists in the zeitgeist.
Although I guess you could
Like,
probably say the same thing about like Godzilla. Like Jaws probably took a lot of inspiration from Godzilla.
I don't know, because Godzilla is like malevolent. He's not like doing it. It feels like Jaws has a vendetta. Like he's trying to get people. Godzilla is just really big and he wrecks stuff. But
And you're right, like it's not about the characters in those early Godzillas.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the Godzillas, it's really not about the characters. Whereas here, I feel like Jaws is.
Yeah.
But Jaws was also a book, so that
Yeah.
might be like, I don't know where the inspiration really comes from.
I love the old Godzilla. Like my favorite is like Godzilla vs. Biollante. It's one of my favorite movies. But I think the reason I would draw a big distinction between like Godzilla and Jaws is it's always Godzilla fights off whatever is probably worse for the humans.
Yeah.
Whereas Jaws is just trying to kill people, you know, which is what sharks do. They need to eat.
Yeah, but they like, I don't like the depiction of this shark. 'Cause
I don't
it's not
either.
It's not how sharks actually behave.
Yeah.
And also not like attacking boats and being able to destroy shark-proof cages.
Yeah. This
That's
did
ridiculous.
a lot of damage. And I mean, like, check out like Shark Week on Discovery. There is like a lot of stuff out now that's like trying to like has like conservation efforts to kind of undo what Hollywood and cinema has done to the perception of sharks.
Yeah, it's entered into the collective unconscious
Right.
that sharks are much worse than like really we should have had like Jaws should have been a hippo,
Yeah.
because that would have been more like
They're
realistic.
actually extremely dangerous.
Incredibly.
Yeah. So this movie, I mean, when it came out at the time, I don't think they had any idea that it was going to basically be like, oh, like sharks are terrible. We can, it's fine to just destroy this huge part of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
This movie didn't do that on purpose, but I do like that. It seems like now there's a huge effort going into being like, these are not just like vicious man eaters. That
Yeah.
This movie did do some damage there, but yeah, we can move on from that. I do want to talk a little bit about the look.
Yeah, let's talk about like some of the things that Jaws does well.
Right. It is in the 2.39 to 1 aspect ratio, which is like that anamorphic widescreen. People call it like letterbox and stuff like that. But this is one of at least the most well-known movies to really start using that aspect ratio. And that's basically what any kind of really dramatic cinematic movie uses now. Like we're going to refer to it again, but like almost every Marvel movie is in this aspect ratio. Like your big summer blockbusters all use this now. And this was like kind of one of the first ones to like really establish that as like a mainstay in like that sort of genre. And I think that's cool. Like I said, this movie does a bunch of stuff to like stuff that are staples now. All started pretty much because of Jaws.
Yeah, it is funny like thinking about like how ultra wide it is.
Right.
But it's fascinating because like I don't think it necessarily like there's a big difference between it being square and it being wide and then like being super wide, I guess. Like I think that there's probably a limit to how wide it can be
Right.
before it gets too distracting. But I think once you get past like 16:9, then it's harder to tell.
Right. I think this movie would have sucked to watch on TV in the 70s, like whenever it got released. Like,
Yeah.
because I get to watch it on a nice wide screen because that's how TVs are made now.
Yeah.
But back then, you got a tube TV. This must have looked like garbage on it.
Yeah.
Like, the way that like if it was shown on TV, because it got a release on like channels were like showing it and stuff too. So it was a little edited and everything, but it must have looked like crap, like having to be all squared up on the old tube
Right.
TVs. So
That's funny.
that'd be an interesting to go back and look at it that way and be like, ooh.
So, and speaking of cinematography, like there's a lot of fun technical stuff going on here. Like there's a lot of long shots that are really well paced. They're really well set. Like you have that ferry shot when Brody gets on the ferry and the mayor joins him. That's a fairly long, over a minute shot, and you have everybody moving in the frame, and they move to different sections, and like things are in and out of focus. That's a lot of fun. There's this.
Is that
one,
where they're trying to decide if they're going to shut down the beach or not?
Yeah, yeah.
I love thinking of that part. It's almost like the mob, like mafia boss is like, hey, you can't shut down the beach. Like
Yeah, but he's wearing like an Easter suit and like seersucker pants.
they're all like in pastels. It's so goofy, but it kind of has that feel of like
Yeah, it's like a shakedown,
yeah, it's really weird.
like the Coney Island shakedown.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so you have the ferry shot. You have the one where he's walking out to the crowded beach before the second attack, and you see him walk out, and then we zoom out and see the whole landscape of the beach and
I
all
love
of
that,
the
yeah.
people. It's a great shot. There's a lot said right there with your camera work. You have, and then after that, you have like. He's talking with the mayor and with Hooper underneath the big Amity sign where they've painted the shark in, and that the angle's really low to really emphasize the sign, this big looming presence, and
Yeah.
these small men trying to figure out, in their small world, how everything works.
Is that's after they've caught the one shark that they think is the culprit?
I think so. I can't remember the order of events because they don't really matter.
Yeah, that shark, it was like shipped from, I want to say, it was somewhere like in like the Gulf of Mexico is where they got it. One of the southern states got it, and then it had to be taken like I think because they filmed this in Martha's Vineyard in California, so it had to be like shipped all the way there. And they said it was absolutely putrid by the time it got on set. They're like everyone on set is like trying not to like retch.
That's
during
amazing
these
because there's
scenes.
like 30 people on that.
They're like, it was vile, apparently. Because I guess they couldn't find a shark to catch like on the West Coast, so yeah, they
Yeah,
brought
'cause
it all.
tiger sharks don't live on the West Coast.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. They're like, they had to ship the shark in.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure at least tiger sharks don't live on the West Coast.
I don't know enough about the habitat of sharks.
Let's get back to the things I do know.
Yeah.
And then you have like Quint's monologue, like in probably the best scene of the whole movie, where he's talking about like all of the I forget what it was, like that ship, the USS, was it the McIntyre, the one that gets attacked and like it capsizes and then they all get eaten by sharks, and just like him, that slow dolly zoom in on him as he is really setting this mood of this sailor story is unnerving. It's so well paced, it's well acted, it's well lit. That's a lot. That's great right there. But no one really talks about that. Like,
Yeah.
that's a great example of filmmaking. That's not what Jaws is, though.
Yeah, I do think all of the best stuff in this movie comes from when like those three are together and they're like kind of just swapping like the sailor stories and stuff. And it also leads into what I think is the most awkward scene I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah,
It's like
I
when-
love it.
It's where they're like comparing scars. Like Hooper throws his leg up on the table, and then Quint throws his leg up on top of him, and then they just kind of keep talking with like their legs intertwined. I was like, what is happening?
Yeah,
here? It's-
exactly.
Cinematically, it's such a weird shot. But
Yeah,
I like it.
it's like a dick comparing contest, like contest, like. But I think like it's interesting. Like I think about that as like, oh, that's weird, homoerotic, but it's mostly just because like of our society. Like
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think like it certainly isn't weird like when girls do it,
No, you're right.
But it's weird for guys, especially weird to see on film.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole point of it is it was meant to be like these guys are getting close and getting drunk and like
For sure. And then they start like singing the songs together, stuff like I said, like that's the best part of the movie is to like really flesh out the relationship between these guys. It makes
Yeah.
it matter so much more than when they have like the conflict at the end.
And in a small space of time, when you actually physically close the gap, like when you cross taboos in stories, those form bonds in the viewer's mind much quicker than anything else, because it's like, oh, they have something like that they've that they've bonded over, that they've connected on, that other people never would ever do. This is reserved only for people that are very close.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. And it's like you said, like that's the part of the movie that no one talks about. It's like we're going to need a bigger boat. Like that's what makes Jaws.
Yeah, or smile, smile you, what is it? Smile, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Like that's Jaws, which is sad.
Because I think, and another part that I think is really well done, and you don't get enough of them, is like the underwater shots, like the way the movie starts out at like the perspective of the shark, and it's like the first half of this movie is a horror movie, like the way it starts, the girl being attacked, and it's like this really slow, and that's the part where the sound really works, like the score really works, and it is like coupled with what's on screen, and everything's working together.
We also have credits there.
Yeah,
and it's nice. That's the whole point of that.
It's a good setup for it, and then I think there's like maybe one more underwater scene where they find like that shipwreck. They try to.
Well, they also have the one at the end,
right,
where he's getting attacked. But I also just like even shots cutting to the shark's perspective under the water. Like we have a lot of those. Like think of like Open Water or like any other type of movie. Like we're so saturated with CGI now that we just throw all of these shots in. They don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah, Deep Blue, The Meg, like all these shitty shark movies that come out now.
Yeah,
like, they like take advantage of the technology being good enough to do that now. And I understand like there were limitations in 75 when this came out, so you couldn't like maybe get as many of those shots as you want. I just think when they are used, they're really good. They're probably some of my cinematically like my favorite or the most well done shots, I think.
Yeah, and I would say like it's weird thinking about like Jaws eating someone, and that's not really the movie, because I feel like one of the most tense sequences in the whole film is when Quint gets eaten. Yeah,
I like that scene a lot. My only problem with it is it shows too much of the shark. Because I think a lot of what makes that scene really good is like how well like Quint, like how well it's acted, and like you get the close ups on him kind of being shaken around, he's coughing up blood, and just the way he's screaming, it seems real.
And there's no music.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so it's like you're wholly engrossed in that scene, and then when it cuts to like this kind of goofy shark, it kind of takes you out of it. That's an example of a movie where I think like you needed less of the creature in it to make it more scary. It's like, because every time you see it, like it kind of takes you out of it, you know?
Yeah. And he did wait for a good portion of the film, you know? It's not really seen throughout the first half,
right?
Mostly just the fin. But I do feel like there was a few too many cuts back to, this is a giant animatronic shark on the end of this boat. See, that's where I kind of like, it's tough to criticize that because they do wait a long time to really have the shark in it, but I think it's still too much. Like, yeah,
I think, we've talked about like Jurassic Park before, and you criticize how there's too much T-Rex in it. And I think this kind of falls into that same thing where it's like there's too much shark in this. Like
it's a little self-indulgent.
Yeah.
Like this is like we made these, we need to show them, like, and that's the whole point of like showing the T-Rex and like the flashing thunder and lightning, and is because of like, look at what we can do, look at how terrifying this is and how real it looks, which kind of actually undercuts it's why it's even terrifying.
Yeah, like I said, I think because Robert Shaw, plays Quint, I think he does so well in that scene. It's like, well, you don't really need the shark to be in it that much. Like just the little bits of like the front of the shark's mouth, you know, like you can see it like latched onto him, but then you get like kind of wider shots of it shaking him about. And I was like, I don't like that.
Well, I think if you do that, we need more further wider shots, really emphasizing man versus nature,
right?
How it's a small experience and how this individual confrontation is happening on a wider scale, and it's tragic, and there's nothing that he can do because he is so small.
Yeah, I do like saying it's tragic. I think the way that sequence ends, where he's just like slowly drug into the water, it's so creepy, and that's like, and that's where it's like it's a small use of the animatronic in it, and because you don't get a really good view of it, you mostly just see Quint being like drug off, and like that's kind of where that's like the emotional like hit of that scene is not like the shark, you know, it should have been like the death of Quint, I think. But yeah, like moving on from that one, what do you think of like how this one ends, like the exploding shark?
I kind of missed the fact, like I knew that he put the tank in there.
Yeah.
I just missed it when I was watching it the second time.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, when, I because I know I paid attention to it. Like, I know I was watching them, but I was like, wait a minute. Oh yeah, he has the tank in his mouth.
Yeah, I was trying to figure, like, maybe I was working on the script at the same time or taking notes, but like, yeah,
I had the same thought. Yeah.
I mean, it's just also, it's also weird to me, like, why they're so concerned, why the shark is so hyper aggressive, why they paid the dude with the worst boat in the entire marina.
I love that. And he's like crazy too, because they're like going to call for help, and not call for help, but they're going to give him like the call in like their coordinates and stuff, you know, be like, we found the shark, and Quentin comes in and smashes the radio. Like, that's kind of stuff that adds tension to the movie, because now it's like, now they're really stranded. Like I said, like the hero's journey, like they've crossed the threshold. They're in like the
descent into the underworld.
Yeah, and like now they're really on their own. So I do like aspects of that. I think that's a good like bit of tension in it. But it is crazy. It's like, why is it the worst boat ever? But then I guess you see other people in like little like sort of rowboats trying to go out there and kill the shark. So
yeah,
maybe he doesn't have the worst boat. I do really like the end, and it just kind of leads into the credits. It's Hooper and they're like on like the little bit of wreckage, kind of just swimming back, like kicking their way, and they're like, oh, we'll make it eventually, you know?
Yeah. What does he say? Brody says something about the water, and it's just like a goofy cliche one-liner,
Which is typical of this movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just ends like that, and they're like, oh yeah, buddies swimming back to shore. And it's like, it's just fine.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of, again, like, I just don't love those types of jokes at the end if your whole movie was meant to be dramatic.
Yeah. It like I said, like it feels like the tone of the movie really changes once they get out to sea, and it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, well, you got rid of your whole horror feel, I think, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
don't know. I love parts of this movie.
Yeah.
It's just strange that it's as widely seen as it is.
Yeah. Did you know that was Steven Spielberg's second movie?
I thought it was his first, actually.
Second one. And
THX. No, that's George Lucas.
But he was like terrified because this movie also like went way over in budget, and it got,
like 3 times over or something.
And I think it got extended a couple months of shooting. So
yeah, because he decided to shoot like at sea.
Yeah,
because it's like, and he just didn't understand like how difficult that is. Like,
right.
it's already difficult enough to shoot something outside, but to do it like at sea, like it's crazy. And he's like, yeah, we could have probably done a lot of shots like in tanks in studios somewhere. He's like, it just wouldn't have had that realistic feel, which is funny considering how this movie doesn't feel real.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's like, why?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
But that's crazy. I think he's only like maybe like I think he's like 28 or something.
I thought he was 27.
Yeah, something
that doesn't
around.
matter. It's around there. Like, I mean,
mid 20s, and
yeah.
you made essentially one of the most famous movies of all time. Like,
Yeah.
that's incredible. And the fact that he thought like he's like, I'll never get a job in Hollywood again, and now he's probably the most well-known director that's ever lived. I think. Like,
yeah. When I went to film school, like, when my conception of movies was like, when I look at Spielberg's filmography, like, that's what I thought cinema was. That's
Yeah.
what I thought movies were, is because these are the things that exist like everywhere. Everyone has seen all of his movies, or at least a significant number of them, because they have really defined what modern cinema is now.
Right.
Or modern movies, like modern Hollywood. I wouldn't call it cinema necessarily, because his movies have moved us further from the cinema.
Yeah. I actually went back and listened to the Under the Skin review we did, and you talk about that. You're like, this is what I thought film school was going to be, and you mentioned Jaws. You're like, I thought we were going to talk about Jaws, and I was like, here you go, man. We get to talk about Jaws now.
Here we're talking about Jaws, because like, yeah. So that's why we needed to talk about Jaws,
Yeah.
because that's what I thought it was, and what it's not. Film is not Jaws.
No. Do you have anything else to add to this?
I don't think so.
How many shark teeth on a puka shell necklace do you give this one?
Buka. Man, that is weird. I didn't really think of like my scores today, especially for this one. It's not
Like I said, this is because this wasn't necessarily like a review. I think you described it as like a meta conversation on why this movie is, you know?
Yeah.
But I still think it deserves a rating.
I'm gonna give it a 5.8.
Okay.
You know, there's fun stuff here.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable. A lot of stuff is well shot. A lot of it's bad, but it's really like I feel more strongly about the bad things based on how they've influenced modern movies more so than how they existed within this film.
Right. Yeah, I think I probably go like 6, just because this is a classic and it deserves its due, you know? And I think just the influence it's had on cinema in general. Like, it's not bad. and I think we kind of knocked a lot of it, but it's fine to watch. And I think if you're interested in like understanding why film is the way it is now, this is something that's worth watching to be like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
That's why Roland Emmerich makes movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Jaws exists. But yeah, with that, we're wrapping this one up. You can find us on any platform you listen to podcasts on, like iTunes and Spotify. We also have an email. Now this is podcasting100@gmail.com. We also upload all these to YouTube, so you can leave a comment there. But yeah, so please reach out, and if you have any suggestions or comments, we actually got our first like thumbs down on a video. I was very excited. Like, we put out something controversial.
Wow. I saw we also lost a subscriber, which is significant for us. We have so few.
I don't mind. Yeah, I was.
But I was like, who signed up for us and then decided, no, this is not what I wanted.
But I think it's very exciting to get a thumbs down. It means we're stirring the pot, you know?
Yeah.
Kicking the hornet's nest.
Yeah, exactly. We'd probably just get on YouTube like, this isn't visual.
Right. But yeah, thank you for listening to Now This Is Podcasting.